All right, we're going to get started. Our next presenter is Michael Werner, here from the United Coalition of Reason. He is a past president of the American Humanist Association and has traveled all the way from North Carolina to be here with us today to present on building and growing secular groups. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And it is really a lot of fun to do this. I'm doing these all over the country at various coalitions and groups. And it's fun to see the various differences. As president of the American Humanist Association, I saw a lot of groups, ones that worked and ones that didn't. And I also started 3 groups myself, so I've had some experience there. I was lucky. I found humanism at a young age. I had just gotten out of Vietnam, etc., went to graduate school, and was a manager of a chemical laboratory in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Now, if you think Rock Hill, South Carolina is a hotbed of liberalism, you may think that it's not true. It's not. And in fact, frankly, I was burnt out. I had a young family. I just wanted to keep a low profile, advance myself and everything else. But then all of a sudden, what happened was, there was a thing in the paper about a big rally to kick evolution out of the schools and put creationism in. And so I went to it, just naively and everything else. And it was 500 people and me. And they had this wonderful, slick, multi-million-dollar movie that was totally distorted with what science is, etc. And so what happened, I got up and spoke against it. And all hell rained down after that. My daughter was beat up every day at the bus stop by the good Christians, my 11-year-old daughter, and all kinds of stuff. But I could go into a long story, but the point is here, I won. I won. One person. Nobody else. There was other people behind the scenes that wanted to stand up but couldn't in that community. But I won. The American Humanist Association was the only group that stood up for me, to help me. And that made a big difference in how I got involved with all this. I was a reluctant activist, trust me. But that's how I ended up here. If you were to tell me all this would happen, all the wonderful things. And I will tell you this, and humanism has been the best damn thing in my life. It has filled my life with awe and wonder, all the wonderful people, all the knowledge that I've got, all the resources for my own living. And for those that are young, I trust me, please do it. When I joined, there was a lot of older people, and it was the era of 60, 70, it was the era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I certainly participated in all of those. But the thing was, I found that the older people in the humanist movement were a lot more open-minded, more creative, more willing to accept new ideas and challenge ideas than any of my friends, my younger friends. They had already shut down their minds. It was closed already. I became what shall I say, a closet intellectual. I was reading Kant and Nietzsche, divorced, and trust me, reading Kant and Nietzsche does not get you a date on Saturday night. So, anyway, I ended up teaching at the University of Chicago, at the Humanist Institute, and a lot of other things. It's been a wonderful experience, but I've learned a lot, and I hope I can share some of that. But what I'm more interested in is telling you right now, I don't know it all. I certainly don't know it all. I've got some experiences, but I will tell you this. The world is changing rapidly, real rapidly, and I don't know where it's going. I thought I did. I'm not sure anymore. So what I hope to do is give you some tools. Think of this, I'm going to give you like a garage. You know, a garage, you've got a bunch of tools. You got hammers and screwdrivers, and some of these tools will work for some things and some of them won't for other things. But my job isn't to tell you what to do, it's to help you sustain, build, and evolve your group. Whatever your group's mission and goals are, and that can change and be different for each group. My job is to help you with that. And by the way, this PowerPoint presentation is going to be sent out to all of you. My desire is that a lot of you are in leadership positions, that you will go back to your own groups, use this, maybe modify it or whatever, you can plagiarize it whatever way you want, and then help build your own group. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, Where your group is now. You know, you got a group and you also think, what do I want my group to be? Part of what I'm trying to do, I want to stimulate your minds. So I want you to think about it. We don't have time. If we were a smaller group, I was going to actually do workshops, you know, actually go through it, develop a project. We don't have time, but I want you to think about these things and think about them now and later. Where your group is now, but where you want it to be. And also, what are the issues affecting your group before and after? Could I just hear a couple instances where there's issues affecting your group in a, you know, it's holding it back or negative or something, just a couple instances. Anybody got any?
Attracting new members.
Attracting new members, okay?
Getting people to volunteer to help.
Getting people to volunteer to help.
Changing the organization.
Adjusting organization structure and mission, maybe, those kinds of things, yes.
Adequate meeting spaces.
Adequate meeting spaces. By the way, every one of these things we're going to be talking about in here so far. Anybody got anything else?
Drama between members.
Drama between members. Yeah.
Diversity.
Anything else? These are all, by the way, did you notice none of these are philosophical issues? What are they? They're people issues. Too many times we get caught up in the philosophy. I teach philosophy. I taught it at the University of Chicago, and I'm teaching at the University of North Carolina. You know, we get all on our theoretical heads and we forget that we're human beings, flesh and blood, bodies that leak. What is the mission of your group? Every group should work out a mission. If you don't have a mission, a carefully thought out mission, and that everybody agrees on, maybe not everybody, but at least you have a consensus. By the way, what is a consensus normally? Anybody know? 80%. Most group building exercises look at 80%. You get 80%, that's a pretty good group consensus. Also, what are your group's measurable goals? Notice the measurable in that whole thing. You want some goals. Every group's goals are going to be different. But the goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time, and challenging. Sometimes that's called SMART plus C, if you take the first letter of that. And finally, put them down in writing. Set short-term and long-term goals. Short-term goals are different than long-term goals. I was in the Humanist of Chicago for 20 years. We started that group. Actually, two groups I started up there. But their goal is they want to have, eventually grow to they have a meeting at the United Center, you know, where the Bulls play. And they're serious about it. That's their long-term goal. They want to fill the United Center with a lot of crazy humanists. Short-term goals, you know, what are you going to do this next month for your next meeting? This is most important. What is the style of your group? Too many times we get caught up, you know, we're atheists. Our group is an atheist group, or a humanist group, or a rationalist group, or a skeptical group, or a Unitarian group, or ethical culture group, etc. Now I came up this morning, and I could have worn I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, right on the water. So that's why I got this kind of shirt. I could have been out on the beach. I could have worn this shirt, right? But I didn't. I could have worn this. Or I could have worn my t-shirt, which is a humanist t-shirt. Notice, it doesn't really make any difference. It doesn't change who I am. It's just a matter of style. And some of us are more rational than others. Some of us are more experiential. We want something evocative. The group here is real, their style is to go out and do community action. I work with a group in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they're very focused on political action, because they're right in the state capitol there, etc. I've been in other groups that, well, I could go on and on. Ethical culture groups are very intensely focused on ethical living and teaching ethical values to children. Every group is different. My point is, though, there is no right way to do what we do. There's no right way. There are different ways, and it's all okay. The problem is each one of us thinks our way is the right way. If we're real rationally oriented, gee, guess what? We're going to be oriented to it. The problem is we don't respect and honor that there's other traditions out there. We might be a communitarian. We might be more community oriented. You know, we might want to build a strong, intentional community within our group. Or we might be this perfect loner. You know what? We need all of these people. I will say this. I like to think of myself as a balanced humanist. But every day I wake up, it's like putting on those shirts. One day I'm rational as can be, and the other day I'm all over the place. Some days I'm experiential, and some days I'm just in my head. Some days I want to be with others, some days I don't. And you are too. Right? Aren't we? I just throw this out that there's no right way. And that's what this Coalition of Reason is about. What we're trying to do is say, look, we have all of these different secular groups, and each one of us has something to offer each other. We support and build with each other, and you know what? We can learn from each other, and we can also maybe sometimes try on a different shirt that doesn't quite feel right. You know what I'm saying? What was funny is we had a guy who put on a humanist revival service in our group. Now, I was real worried how this was going to go on. First of all, he's British. I didn't know if he knew what a revival service really was. He did an incredible job. I was worried that all of our hardcore, nationalists would really be offended. My God, those were the people that got so into it, man, they were chanting. It was we had so much fun with it. So you just don't know. You just don't know. Anyway, my point is, when we got this Colorado Coalition of Reason, you have a chance to work with other groups to support each other. Remember, we're 19% of the damn population of the United States now. Where is our political power? Where is our social power? We have it and we're not using it. We have to start working together. It's not acting like, the cats, herding cats syndrome. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to, hopefully will accomplish today, is your style of your group. Understand your own style and the style of your group. And say, is that, am I rational, experiential, small, large? Do I want an intentional community or not? Do I want social action? Do I want anti-religion to be my focus? There's no right way. Do you want to ask yourself, maybe I got a style for myself and I want to change it. Maybe I'm a physicist and I don't appreciate art. Well, I'm going to start learning about art. Maybe our group, has this one style and we realize it's stagnated. We need to open it up and change it to something else. The group I mentioned in Raleigh was very social, was very political, action-oriented. They're trying to move forward because they got a lot of it's a very young group. They're trying to move with a lot of young families to a more family-oriented group. They're going to try and intentionally change the focus from outside, right, to inside. How do they support each other, especially growing up with a lot of children? And it's respecting all the styles. Make sure that you use the national organizations that you've got at your disposal. Each one of them has a focus, and each one of them has strengths and they have weaknesses. And so it's understanding. I just wrote down several of them. You got the American Atheists, the Atheist Alliance, the FFRH, the American Humanist Association, the CSH. You got the Society for Secular Judaism, the American Ethical Union. You have Smart Recovery. By the way, I was one of the founders of Smart Recovery. It's a non-profit, non-religious addiction program. most of it was, almost all the leadership and originators were humanists. And I just got an email this week from a guy in Montrose, right down the road. He just started a group. So these are the kind of things, again, it's separate thing, it's addictions, you know, but I will guarantee you, 1 out of 10 of you are addicted. 1 out of 10. Sitting here, we have 100 people, 10 of you are. About 7 of you, oh no, 8 of you are addicted to alcohol. I can go on. You don't think so? Yeah. You don't think so? You know why you don't think so? Because you don't know the pains and mechanisms behind people's faces right now. You don't know what helped people do. I've been working on this for 23 years, and in my own humanist group, about 10%. These are college professors, and one is a psychologist therapist.
Compared to regular society.
About the same. Addictions don't take prisoners. They're equal opportunity exploiters. It doesn't matter how smart or dumb you are, how rich or poor you are, once you get hooked, you're hooked. You know, the monkey gets on your back, it's going to take you over. I can go on a whole long thing on that. But anyway, the point is support something like Smart Recovery. We're also talking about the American International Ethical and Humanist Union, skeptics groups, Camp Quest. There's 13 Camp Quest in the United States right now. Did you know that? We just started one in the Carolinas, a new one. In fact, they had to put a moratorium on starting them up because they were growing too fast. We've got them now, there's about 10 in Europe now starting up. It's exploding. You know how you have to control your growth? They had to put a moratorium on it because we're growing too fast. There's an incredible need for this. The Secular Coalition of Reason, the Unitarian Universalist Associations, Americans United, ACLU, NARAL, NOW, all of these groups are either like-minded or close to being like-minded. Use them, support each other, and get our power. Regional organizations, exactly what this group is, the Colorado organization. We're getting these all over the place, and you know what? In some cases, they're getting more attendance than the national organizations. The reason is it's expensive to fly. Well, you know, even in Colorado, okay, it's a long way from Denver, 4.5 hours or so, but you know what? You could do it if you're really interested, right? That's why the regional organizations are powerful. And by the way, North Carolina and South Carolina, where I'm from, we put together, we have a speakers bureau now. And one of the things we talk about, this is one of the things you can do. It's expensive to bring in a speaker, you know, because of the travel. Usually you can get somebody essentially free like myself, but it's expensive. So what we've done in North Carolina and South Carolina, we got a circuit. We bring somebody in, we split the cost, and then we got them going one night, you know, and I've done this, you know, where every night, and literally, I had a couple afternoons too, I was speaking to different groups. I'd rather do that and get it all done with, you know, say the travel, because the travel time is what kills you. You may want to think about that in Colorado. Where's the world headed? This is really concerning. I thought I knew a lot, but the world is changing rapidly.
What do you think?
I thought it was going to pretty much follow the model that we had, that was going to be a slow growing, that we were going to be always the outsiders, etc. No, we're mainstream now. We got to change our thinking. We're no longer the radical outsiders. We are big, 19%, bigger than other Hindus, Muslims, all of them put together. How have the Jews got so much power with 1%? We got 19%? Think about that.
But we're free thinkers, therefore we can't ever organize.
Well, that's the herding cat syndrome. We've got to get over that. Because here's the thing. All of the different ways of thinking and everything else, in the end, 95 to 98% of what we think is virtually the same. I'm going to be real frank. The biggest difference you got is going to be between, on the political spectrum, between left and right. You got some Ayn Rand, libertarian objectivists, and on the other hand, you got some very progressive people. Most of our movement is progressive. But I understand the Ayn Rand movement. We all have skeletons in our closet. I'll let you know mine. When I was a young man and rejected religion, I fell into because, simple-minded philosophy. I fell into that. I went through the Jesuit Institute. I studied on the Ayn Rand. In fact, as a young man, I was found under the table by Ayn Rand. The real woman. Yes, he was some piece of work. And asked to be a teacher. I eventually started, believe it or not, this is my big sin. I started the Libertarian Party in North Carolina, was one of the founders of it. So I've got my sense of it. To compensate for that, I eventually was in the Midwest Radical Scholars Society, which is basically the hardest core communists in the country. And now I describe myself as a radical political moderate, so whatever that is. I've been all over the map. But my point is, we have a big enough tent that we can accommodate everybody. I did want to comment, Richard did a fantastic job explaining in a short time. He didn't have enough time to really completely flesh out, but I think it's important. We talk about these organizations. I want to give you a little bit more history, add on to what he said. He pointed out that during the Enlightenment, the philosophers did not, they were atheists, they didn't believe in God. The problem was, they didn't have an alternative story. They didn't have one. Emerson came along with, transcendentalism, saying it was an oversoul, which was totally naturalistic, vague, but he didn't really have anything until he had a news story in 1859 with Darwin, The Origin of the Species. Now we have an alternative story. Things changed. The way the various organizations and philosophies developed was, we talked about the free thought groups. The free thought groups developed in two different spans. One out of Germany, one out of England. The English variety was just very anti-religion. The one in Germany was not just anti-religion, and it's not just anti-religion, it's really, think like this, it's anti-authoritarian, totalitarian thing, where people are oppressing your mind and telling you what it wasn't just religion, it was any kind of totalitarianism of the mind. And so a lot of these people are actually theists, but they didn't want to have a church telling them what to believe. They came over, a lot of the Germans came over, there was over 300 of these groups. Most of them were socialist groups, that almost all of them were cults of personality that fell apart as communes in about the 1830s, in Ohio, and Indiana in particular. There's one major one that you know about that survived, the Amana colonies in Iowa. But anyway, that kind of fell apart, but that's where a lot of the free thought tradition developed. Kurt Vonnegut was a third generation free thought descendant. That's where he descended from those people. But during that period, though, there was a lot of liberal religious people, like Emerson. They formed what was called the Free Religious Society. And this society, again, was trying to toy with the humanism, atheism, but how do you do it in a religious context? Eventually, what happened in the Midwest, Unitarian ministers in the Midwest, not the East, which were the Boston Brahmins, but in the Midwest, they were very much more free thought, again, because of that free thought tradition. And they developed different philosophy. There was one in particular, John Dietrich, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in 1910 was pulling in 5,000 people in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a totally humanist message. And he was the one, along with Curtis Reese, another Unitarian minister, who coined the word humanism in the modern vernacular we're talking about. Before there was all this discussion about humanism, the origin, it doesn't matter. We're talking Platonic entities like this is a channel or something like this. What happened was, humanism was, they were trying to describe a whole worldview, not just what I didn't believe. I didn't believe in God. Or I believe that there's a naturalistic world. This world is all it is, and it's enough. And we use open-minded critical thinking, but also it's an ethical base that this world, because it's all we have, we're the ones responsible for it. That movement grew like crazy. There was a whole bunch of books on humanism in the modern term humanism, which is non-supernatural. And then in 1933, because of what happened was, in 1933, they developed the Humanist Manifesto 1. The reason they developed that was because, frankly, there was concern that civilization was falling apart. They literally thought, they put all the ideas together. It was all these disparate ideas, and they got it all in one page. Humanist Manifesto 1. We went back to that when we wrote Humanist Manifesto 3, one page. Obviously, there's a lot more, but when we concentrate. What is that Weltanschauung, that worldview, that integrated what the Europeans call a life stance? It's not just philosophy or ideas, it's how do we live our lives. I think that's important too. And certainly the group here is exemplified. In the 50s, Unitarianism focused on humanism and was the fastest growing denomination in the United States. It fell apart. I actually taught at the theological school there, and I actually wrote a book on the history of humanism within the Unitarian Universalism. It's going to come out this year. But that's where the modern term humanism, where humanism really developed. The American Humanist Association then was the big temple of those organizations. Madeline O'Hare was on the board. She was, from all the people I talked to, the most cantankerous, nasty woman they've ever met, people I know, who never think ill of anyone. But she left. And then out of her group, then some people left off, and that started the Atheist Alliance. And then another group, the FFRF, left because they couldn't stand her either and didn't like authoritarian power. American Humanist Association is a democratic organization, the only one left. In 1978, Paul Kurtz was the editor of the Humanist magazine, and frankly wanted total control power, and they wouldn't give it to him, so he quit fired, and then he started the Council for Secular Humanism. That's the kind of genealogy why we have so many groups. But you know, when you get down to it, again, each group has a certain focus. Everybody has one, and they do it well. And then each group has some weaknesses. But ultimately, all of us pretty well have the same kind of concept. But humanism, more than anything else, it's a whole worldview. Atheism is what and I use all the terms, by the way. I'll call myself a skeptic to people. I'll call myself an atheist, certain people. I usually start off with atheist, and then I say, well, what I really am is a humanist, because atheism is what I don't believe, and I'm not going to be defined by what I don't believe. I'm going to be defined by what I do believe. And here's what I do. And maybe somebody saw my column. I used to go out to do battle with the fundamentalists and debates all the time, and never got me anywhere. Because I was, frankly, pretty angry, and I would abuse people. I'd go home and I'd feel a little dirty. More important, I wasn't winning anybody over.
Did you repent?
I did. I confessed my sins. But what I did, I changed. And now when I get these debates, I let them talk about God or the Bible. I don't care. You know what I do? I talk about humanism. I say, well, that's all well and good about your Bible, but it's just a book. Here's what I live in. You know what? I talk about all the wonderful things we do believe. And you know what? Now they're on my ground. You can't believe how they just kind of fall apart. Because I know a lot about the Bible. I guarantee you, don't twist and turn it all around. I start talking about the Bible, it's a true enough. When I start talking about what I do believe, then they start saying, well, 95% of what I believe, they believe is the spiritual portion. I don't believe that. It's really interesting what happens. I urge you to think about that when you're debating, so-called debating people. More important, think about winning them over. So anyway, I was out smoking crack to say, where's the future heading? Here's what's interesting. The United States is turning secular. There's no question about it. I've spent some time, a couple months in Europe, a couple of weeks in Europe last summer. And, it's so humanistic now. I was in the red light district on a tour with my wife, and in the middle there's this beautiful old 14th century church. And one of the American people there said, oh, what do the people there think about all this around them? And the guy looks at her, she says, He says, nobody goes to church in Europe anymore. That's a performance place. And as a lot of people say, one of the jokes is, there's only 3 times people go to church anymore in Europe. And 2 of them are carried in. Matching, batching, and dispatching. In Europe this last year, the British Humanist Association performed more weddings. They performed 840,000 weddings. They're humanist celebrants than all the other religions combined with Anglican. Nobody gets married in the Anglican church anymore. Their humanist celebrants are doing it. I think that's what's going to happen here.
60 Minutes actually did an expose earlier this year about Ireland, who's been the source of more priests throughout the world.
Yeah.
In the place, they ordained 1 priest last year.
A study was done, a mathematical study was done, and they predict 9 countries are going to be, religion will, they said disappear. I don't think it'll disappear, but that's the word they use. And Ireland, of all places, is going to be one of them. They hate the Catholic Church then. They know about all the abuses in it.
Wonder why.
Did anybody ever read Angela's Ashes? If you haven't, it'll tell you what the Catholic Church in Ireland was like. So anyway, my point is, Europe is already secular. They got a different culture here. We're going secular too. There's no question about it. We're the fastest growing demographic. But I question this. This is what I'm worried about. I don't know what kind of secular society we're going to get. Remember, Karl Rove and Stalin were both atheists too. I don't want that kind of society. I want to carry a humanistic society, secular society. I'm not sure we're going to have that. The other thing I'm concerned about is, how is that going to play out in our lives? America is different than the United States is different than Europe. In Europe, people still live within, the majority of people live within 50 miles of where they grew up, where they were born. That's not true in the United States. Nobody's from where they were. I've lived all over the country, including Utah, by the way. So that alienation, that lack of community, wherever we are, you can't get over human nature. We are social animals. We need connections with others. So I question, this is one of the big functions of religion today. Religion in the United States, forget about the ideology. You talk to anthropologists, sociologists, that isn't what religion's about. It's about what people call the functional aspects of religion. The functional aspects of religion are about community, ethical teaching, the 3 things, marrying, those kinds of things. We all know social Catholics or social Mormons, etc. They go to church, but they don't really believe in it. It's sort of like, brushing your teeth in the morning. You think about it. So I'm wondering what we're going to have. And I'm not sure what our groups are going to be like. We may just disappear. We might become like Europe. I'm throwing that possibility out. Conversely, we might be the important grounding centers for community. Maybe that's going to be our function in the future. I don't know, and I don't pretend to know, but I throw that out to you to think about seriously. We have a function to play as we get more secular. Yeah?
Do you have any words of wisdom for groups that have different beliefs in getting along? Because it seems to me that there are going to be groups with different beliefs.
Yeah. Well, there's no magic there, obviously. There is no magic in things, but there is keeping good ethical principles. The primary ethical principle for humanism is respecting the inherent worth and dignity of each person. That means that each one of us, in a Kantian sense, if we get a little philosophical, we have equal moral worth. And respecting each for others. Of course, we may differ with views and everything else. Erik Erikson calls it despeciation when you start to, I've got articles written on this kind of thing, but it's honoring, each person's inherent right and dignity. That's what we've got to do. It's hard. It's hard. I'm always thinking about creating my future. It starts out waking up every morning, and every day I find something creative to do with my life. I'm going to tell you right now, all of your groups, this is what you need to be thinking about. How do we create a new world? There is a new secular world coming here in the United States. I don't know what it's going to be, and I will tell you, it could be a Karl Rove future, or it could be Denmark. Either way, what are the happiest people in the world, the most productive, the best living, the lowest incarceration rate, the greatest opportunity? Denmark. What is the highest rate of non-belief in the world? Denmark. It's linearly placed. If you put happiness and prosperity, it's perfectly directly correlated with secularity. But I'm not sure that will follow with the United States, because the United States has always been an outlier. I think we have a special condition here, so I think we have to be careful. And I think that creative thing is what we do in our life. I will tell you this, at an early stage in my life, I committed myself to humanism. And I really mean that. And I'm dogmatic about it, maybe what we would say, but I don't believe humanism is just an alternative way of viewing life. I believe it's not only the best. I believe it's certainly not the only. I think there's only good ones. Christians who live good lives too. But I think it's absolutely the best for our survival, for our species and our world. And we've seen what can be done when we look at the Scandinavian countries, and we can do that here. Now, I want to talk about some specific ideas now. Let's get back to some hardcore. I'm talking a little kind of philosophically. Anybody got any comments about, the philosophical aspects I've talked about? Questions about it? I'm going to talk about some specific ideas of our growing secular groups, and there's probably many more, and I hope to learn from you. I've already learned a couple. First of all, let's talk about the classic pitfalls. The first one is the three angry old white men sitting around a library table. If all you're doing is bitching about religion, trust me, that's what you're going to end up with. And believe me, when I was president of the American Humanist Association, I saw several groups descend to that. Frankly, you're going to turn people off, and the women especially will leave, and then the younger people leave. If all you're doing is negative, by the way, again, this PowerPoint is going to be given to you, so it's going to be sent out to you, so you don't have to write this all down. But I'm telling you, that's what happens. You have to maintain a positive, whatever you're doing, whatever focus it is. Maybe it's anti-religion, but do it in a positive way. I don't know how to explain it. You need to do that. Otherwise, you're just, people don't like all that negative stuff. It's boring. It's boring. Demographically balanced. Try to get, it's hard, every group, this is one of the biggest problems, is trying to get a demographic balance of age and gender. My group in Wilmington is nicely balanced. The group that I was mentioning in Raleigh and the one in Fayetteville I helped start out, it's very much young people, and they don't have any experienced humanists that can help guide them, and so it's been a rough go, and they're finally just getting their legs about it. A narrowness of style. If all you are is anti-religion, or all you are is communitarian, you're necessarily, and maybe this is okay, maybe this is what you want, but you're only going to attract, remember that, you're only going to attract a certain group of people. There's one group, an atheist group, I won't even say where it's from, but it's a huge group. I mean, they got, I had 500, somebody told me they got like 800 people in this atheist group. And I'll just be real frank, it's all young people, all under 35, and all it is a swinging group. And that's all well and good, but, it's just a bunch of drinking and pick-up place for everybody, all the young people. But you know what? It doesn't do anything to develop the movement. It doesn't do anything for their own personal development. It's very narrow. And of course, when people come in, a married couple, and doesn't want to do that, then they're gone, right? So, I mean, you can get this narrowness of style all over the place. They're trying to. Some people in that group are trying to get it changed. This is really important. You were mentioning lack of trust. Study after study on organizations have shown you have to have a trust between members where you have a difference. I've been on boards. I've been on a lot of boards. I've been on boards where there was a total lack of trust. I've been on totally dysfunctional boards where there was no trust, and they were dysfunctional, and groups. The AHA board, for example, had in the past a real dysfunctional characters on it, and it's got a real good, healthy mix right now. NATCH, North American Committee on Humanism, the same way. The Humanist Institute, real balance now, and real healthy when people got healthy individuals working together. It's so important that you trust each other, because if you don't trust each other, you're just not going to succeed. There has to be that certain level that no matter what, I may disagree with you, but I'm not going to disrespect you and I'm going to support you. I put it this way. We humans have great powers of critical intelligence, right? Man, we can parse anything from homeopathy to Mormonism to you name it, right? But there's something different. There's supportive intelligence. My wife, I've seen this with her and my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law just celebrated her 90th birthday. My mother-in-law is the kind who, all the children, grandchildren, a lot of them really screwed up big times in their lives. But she is one of those people who really does give unconditional love. No matter what, she's always got a hug and a smile, never criticizes them. And you can see that in their darkest hours, it was a support for them, that they built on. We just had a reunion, family reunion and birthday for her last weekend, 90th birthday. It just came up out time after time. A lot of these kids totally screwed up, but that, again, critical intelligence and supportive intelligence. I'll give you another example. With my own child, I had a child, not a child now, he's 26, but he had Tourette's and ADHD, and he was a royal pain in the ass. And my wife would tell me, you know, I would just question it. And my wife would say, Mike, let it go. Just let it go. Her intuitional powers of supportive intelligence are a lot better than mine on critical intelligence. Something to think about in your groups and in your own personal lives. I suffer from it greatly myself. Lack of trust, lack of community. You gotta build a community. I don't care how important your group is in, in your atheism or free thought or whatever it is. If people don't feel a sense of community, they're not going to stay. They will leave. And I'll talk to you about, as we go down, how to build that. Concentrated leadership. There's a 90-10 rule for all volunteer organizations. That's where 90% of the work is done by 10% of the people. It's standard. Standard. There's ways to get around it. If you can just push it to 80-20, just push it to 80-20, and there's some techniques I'll show you how to do that, you will immensely make your organization much healthier. If you think that, it's just you, your organization, that's normal on any volunteer organization. Taking on too many or too few projects. You know, it's the old rule, focus, 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 especially if you got a small group, you can't do a lot. I noticed that the group here in Grand Junction, they're focusing. They're not trying to spread themselves out too much. They got focused. I think that is so smart. Do something and do it well. For example, right now in Wilmington, we grew like crazy, and now we're trying to do too many things. We got stuff going on every day almost in our calendar. And we got, and one of the next board meeting we're going to be talking about, weeding some of them down. It's just too complex. It's boggling people's minds. There's so much going on. Too negative. You can get so negative that, again, it just turns people off. Toxic personalities. This is a key issue. It's changing because we are becoming more mainstream. But traditionally, because we've been outsiders and radicals, we get the so-called village atheist syndrome. And the village atheist syndrome is the person who isn't just against religion. Frankly, they're dyspeptic kind of person who is angry, just kind of a loner, kind of got a lot of problems, emotional problems. Typically, these are people who have emotional immaturity. Again, their intellectual intelligence is great, but their emotional intelligence is near zero. I was just speaking with a group down in Myrtle Beach. We helped start it. It was a split-up group from our group. And there's a young man there. He's a classic case. He's a high school student, scored the top SAT in the state and everything else. And I could tell what his problem was. And I talked to him, I said, well, make sure that he's good going to physics and everything. He knows math, right? But I started talking to him about some math, and he had this big argument with me. He was like, his social skills were zero. I said, well, make sure that you get your emotional intelligence so it works well. And he had no idea what I was talking about. I'll tell you this, I managed a $270 million chemical business. I had hundreds of chemists and chemical engineers that worked for me at one time or another. I have never, over those years, I have never seen a chemist or a chemical engineer fail because they didn't know enough chemistry. Never. They always failed because of personality problems. They couldn't focus their abilities. They didn't know how to write. They didn't know how to speak. Their emotional intelligence was low, but it was never their scientific knowledge. And it's the same thing in our organizations. We have to be careful. Toxic personalities will come into your organization. I will guarantee you, one time or another, you'll probably get one or two, and they will destroy your organization. I've seen it destroy chapters. I'm warning you now. I take a harsh view because I've been burned by them. I don't put up with it.
For example, our group in Denver, we had a guy for years who would come, never actually show up to the meetings. Unbeknownst to all of us, he would always go out and talk to the speaker afterwards. He had a book from some guru I never heard of. We'd always hand the book to the speaker. So for years, every speaker we had would think we were a new age group. We were always doing some guru. The first guy would go and talk to him, then he spoke to him, we didn't finally figure it out years later.
No, I'm sorry. Here's my advice. Get rid of them. We had one in the AHA, and finally people just went up to him and said, you're just causing a lot of trouble. You're making the organization dysfunctional. We'd like you to leave. And they kept asking until, guess what? He did. And guess what? He went to another organization, and guess what happened there? Same thing. Totally dysfunctional. I'm sorry. Sometimes we've got to be tolerant, but sometimes indiscriminate pluralism, indiscriminate tolerance gets you into trouble. We want to be nice, and there's a balancing act there too. We want, again, to support it, we've got to support it, but there's some people who will destroy you, and you have to identify these people and not allow it. It's very simple. You ask them to leave. You disrupt their personality. It's going to become less and less, I think, as we become more mainstream. Infiltration by fundamentalists. Every group I've had, we've had fundamentalists or Christians come in there one way or another. And you got to handle it humanely and smart. We've had one that came in there and hid it the whole time. It was just purposely disrupting. We finally figured that person out. Another person came in, identified themselves, and started being disruptive. We told him, look, you can sit there if you're interested in learning, sit there. But we're not interested, this is our meeting, not yours. We're not interested in your philosophy. We've been there, etc. And he eventually came to all the meetings and actually contributed in some nice ways. What was ironic, though, is my son was on a ski team. We were up in Wisconsin for a ski resort where he was competing. And he was up there really for a family reunion, and he saw myself and my wife, and he was over there, I'm not sure like this. And I thought, so this is a great way to handle this. I went over to him and I said, well, hi, Ted. I'm so glad to see you. It's so nice to put a wonderful family on. I killed him with kindness. I walked him because he was telling me what jerks we were. Walked away. This is how you win this. We've got to win this, the rest of society over. Anyway, the fundamentalists it's not just fundamentalists. The Ethical Humanist Society in Chicago, which, by the way, was where Jane Addams and Clarence Darrow belonged. Did you know that? They belong to the Ethical Humanist Society there. And by the way, the ACLU, it primarily started in ethical culture, and how it was housed in ethical culture up in New York City for many years. We got a big role in that. But anyway, the ethical culture in Chicago was infiltrated by the Red Squad. I don't know if you've ever heard about that. That was Daley's, Richard Daley's, he sent people into organizations he viewed as leftists to go in there and purposely disrupt them. Pretend like they were one of you and purposely disrupt them. Well, they got found out. We actually won a lawsuit on that. They got $22,000 out of it eventually. But this is what happened. During the 50s, in the AHA office, one day, two young men, nicely dressed in suits and crew cuts, come in and say, "Oh, gee, we'd like to learn more about humanism." They should have had FBI just painted across their chest, right? They stayed 6 months there and went over every file and everything else. One of them finally left at the end. He came up to Ed Wilson, founder of the American Humanist Association. He said, "You know what? I came here to bless you guys, but I think I'm one of you now." Lack of structure. I mentioned the Fayetteville group. They started out, they didn't have a structure. So what happened was, it was basically whoever yelled loudest, and there got to be, by the time I got in there, they were all yelling and screaming. There was a big pitched battle between this one guy and this one woman. Big battle. Hate, hate, hate. I went in there, and the problem was they had no structure. As much as we hate structure, as much as we hate democracy, as much as we hate Robert's Rules of Order, you know why we have them? They work. And yeah, it's a pain in the butt keeping the building bylaws and all this stuff. But in this case, it was just chaos. And as soon as they went, I told them, "Here, take our bylaws, institute them, immediately go like," and as soon then the battles between these two people and all, and but guess what? It was a democracy. They won or lost based upon this. In fact, I just got an email from one woman. She's moving, and she said, "Mike, you don't know." She said, "You realize you cured my headaches? I had headaches there for a while." That's all of that. Anyway, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about that there's 4 dimensions of the secular life, of humanism, atheism, whatever it is. Sometimes we, again, style, we only focus on one. There's an interpersonal. We have an inner life, an experiential life. Each one of us wants to have an evocative self that wants power and meaning and purpose in our lives. That religion gives people. It tells them who they are, where, and we talk about always empirical knowledge and everything else, and scientific knowledge. There's no way I can prove to you that I love my wife. It's all eternal. There's no way I can prove that I see that shirt is red and other people don't. This is an inner life. It's probably, these things that are experiential to us are probably more important than all the other scientific stuff. Because this is where hope and meaning and purpose and love and understanding, empathy, this is where it all exists. Too many times we ignore this dimension. I urge you to think about it in your programs. How do you help people in sectors? Because especially when people are coming out of religion, they don't know where to ground themselves. Remember I told you that humanism is about telling the whole world it's a grounding for this. And so what we got to do is help people. I've got a young man that I'm working with right now who's going through all kinds of strife because of his family disowned. I got another young woman, she's 18. She came out as both a lesbian and a humanist. Her parents kicked her out of the house immediately. And she came to us, and my wife said, "Don't you worry, you're home now. We have a new thing." The interpersonal. How do I relate to you? Each of us. tattoos. It's really interesting. Our group, we have a group, we've got people with big earrings and everything else. And what's funny, I got some punks, and you know who they get along best with? Some of my 85-year-olds. They identify completely with each other because they honor and respect each other's individual worth and dignity, and we're on the same wavelength. You know, you talk about LGBT issues, and like in North Carolina was Amendment 1 we were fighting. Man, we're all on it. We're on it. We're all together unified on it. The interpersonal tells us how do we interact with each other. And, you know, religion tells us a lot about that, ethical aspects. Well, humanism does too. The society, how do we act in society? What does a good society look like? We talked about Denmark. There might be other forms, etc., but, you know, what does a good society? I'll tell you, the Christians got a view of it, right? They're going to tell you what it looks like. In Muslim society, you know, there is no, in Islam, there is no separation between religion and politics. That's one of the things that defines it. There is no difference. People, the West don't quite understand it. And then we got the global. How do we act towards a global interest? How do we nurture our Earth? And I think we have a particularly important message here. I urge you to think about this because I'll guarantee you, look up there, and I'll guarantee you probably focus on one aspect or another, one dimension or another. I urge you to think about how you personally can maybe grow in some of those other areas, and then also, where is your growth root going? How do you answer questions that people have on those dimensions? What works? Respect all the styles, the rational, experiential, the theoretical, activist, the solitary, communicatory, the intellectual versus common sense, the aggressive versus the tolerant. It's all good. We need all the styles. And also the names we go under. As I mentioned, I call myself a rationalist, a humanist, an atheist, depending on who I'm talking to. It just, you know, it's context dependent. Who I'm talking to, I'll explain who I am. And speak to a positive way of life. Speak to a view of heart and mind, reason and compassion. We're not just automatons. You have to have something emotionally evocative there for people to grab onto. And beware of speaking to only our own style. It's real easy to do. The most important, live our life standards. We talk about it, you know, that we can be moral, live good life, and good without God. Well, by God, you know, and I was guilty as a hypocrite as anybody else. You know, let's live our life stance. Ask yourself, really go back and ask yourself on your group, how attractive is our group to somebody coming in? If I didn't know any better, just try to be a Martian dude. How attractive is my group to somebody coming in the group? In marketing, remember this, in any kind of marketing endeavor, it's not the features that sell, it's the benefits. If I say, we use critical thinking in our group and things like that, you know, I ain't gonna sell, trust me. If I talk about a product and I talk about soap, you know, I talk, well, this feature is that it's got, you know, 1,3 propylene dioxide hydrate and, you know, doesn't do anything. I say, oh wow, it's going to clean twice as better. It's going to benefit you because you're going to have to use half as the amount that you normally use. That's a benefit. Think about what benefits. Whenever you've got your literature, whenever you put out your websites, whenever you're doing any kind of marketing of your group, always, after you get done, screen it. Look, okay, what am I selling? Am I selling my features or our benefits? If you tell people, we're going to be a supportive group for you and your lifestyle to help you grow and support you in it. If you say, we're going to be the group that's going to support church and state separation in our community. If you go, we're the group that's going to help provide secular education for your children. These are real benefits. I urge you to think about that very carefully. In community building, there's a rule. If you don't make 6 friends in 6 months in that group, you will leave it. Again, it doesn't matter how much you support the group, you believe in it, whatever. If you don't make 6 friends in 6 months. So what happens? A newcomer comes in the door, what should you be doing? Walking up to that person, introducing yourself, and being not just friendly, but try to truly be a friend. Again, honoring the important the dignity of that person. Doesn't matter who they are. Maybe their style is different. Maybe they wear a Hawaiian shirt, and you hate Hawaiian shirts. You hate Hawaiian shirts. I know your type. I know you're a Hawaiian shirt hater, prejudice you. You can't help it. Just remember that 6 people in 6 months. 6 people. And it's true. I've watched it. And, I've heard that. And I've watched it for years in different groups. It really is true.
Where did that idea come from?
Studies of different scientific studies of group building. And so the question is, what do you do for that group, for that community building? Organization, let's talk about let's really get down to some details. Have a very good membership chair. That's key. The most key thing you can do, have a very strong person in that position. Also, you have to have very good web resources. The 3 types that you can think about, and maybe you need all 3, is the meetup site, a Facebook, and a separate website. We have all 3 because we think we need them. I think it's too much, but a lot of people say we need it. I'm not as tech savvy as a lot of other people. I know this, that like the previous group I started in Chicago, they use old school technology and they have no web page, they don't use Meetup. It's difficult to find them or to use them. Have formal organizations and bylaws and formal meeting rules. I talked to you about what happened in Fayetteville. You may not like Robert's Rules of Order. You don't have to use Robert's Rules of Order. You can use consensus. Does everybody agree here today? How many consensus do we have, that kind of thing? You can keep it informal, but you still should have some bylaws and rules and general consensus rules, at least. Be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And you can get your own, or you can get it through like the American Humanist Association. I think FFOR does it as well. But here's something important. If you're a 501c3 organization, as a 501c3 organization, you cannot politic. You can politic up there, there's crazy rules about it, but it's basically about 5% of your budget can be. But trust me, don't even do it. Don't even go there. If you have political speakers, if you have a political program come in, make sure it's balanced, or you never endorse, you can never endorse anybody. You can endorse positions. You can be, like we were, against Amendment 1 proposition in North Carolina. You can be for, abortions and things like that. But you cannot politic. And I'll tell you why. A few years ago, American Humanist Association, when, I can't remember which election it was, but we sent people out to a lot of mega churches where they were, promoting, I think it was George Bush, and, came in there. We sued them, they went to the IRS with them, and they lost their 501c3. These were big mega churches, there was like 5 of them. We went after 9, we got 5 of them. They lost it, and were they pissed? The payback thing. So anyway, they've been monitoring a lot of our groups. So, trying to get us too. So don't even go there. Even though there's a little bit of flexibility, don't go there. Don't ever endorse any positions, any parties. You can endorse positions. You can't endorse candidates or political parties.
Can we vilify them and sit?
You know, you really, it's just don't go there. Just play it clean. You don't know who's sitting out there. And you got a cell phone camera going, and they will take you down. Have at least 2 humanist summits. I mentioned what's happening in Europe. It's going to happen in the United States. You need 2 because you need a backup one. For example, for a crazy reason, we got 2 where we are. I'm one. And we had 4 weddings in one day all pop up. Of course, it was June, and he did 2, I did 2. But we got to thinking about, my God, each of us are kind of the backup for the other one. If one of us got sick, we would really be in trouble. But it's really important in a great service and duty you can give. The kids today don't want religious weddings. And, when I did this one, all of this one girl's older girlfriends, from the college, they're all coming up to me. Oh, can I have your car and anything else? They had never seen a humanist celebration, never saw a humanist marriage. And they couldn't believe it. They said, it was so beautiful. Of course, the couple, I worked with them and they wrote it themselves. I have all kinds of samples, etc. for them to pull from the plagiarized one. But they wanted, they're going to, I don't know where they're going to live, but I'll guarantee you, I said, just go online, there's a whole, no matter where you are, there's going to be some celebrants. But each of your groups should have at least 2. Have at least 2 humanist celebrants. And by the way, I've probably done more baby naming ceremonies than anything. Marriage is second and funeral is third. Be positive. Don't get bogged down in the old arguments about why God doesn't exist. People weary of it. We had a guy in our group up in Chicago, and he always wanted to do a program on the rational proof of why God doesn't exist. Well, let me clear, I'm a philosopher. There is none. There is no rational proof of why God doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. This is what we are. It's like telling people a fireman that, should they be talking about whether to put out fires or not. We're non-theists. We're not going to argue about it. We're moving on. Get out of humanism or atheism 101 and move up to 201, 301, 401. It just bores people. It bores me. Unified powers, as I mentioned, are supportive intelligence as much as our powers of critical intelligence. Support people, especially if you got people a little crazy for a while. And like in my group at one time, I got a guy, and I know what's happening. He's got a heavy marijuana use and everything else. And I'm trying to gently, ease him back, if you know what I'm saying, from the brink. You got to be supportive. Again, if they edge over that where they're a toxic personality, well, then you got to do something about it. But otherwise, be humane about it. Gently tolerate come-ons. When people come out of religion, sometimes they just go, oh, I was wrong. Fred Edwards likes to talk about when he was young, he believed in God, then he looked at the others and said, oh, I guess I was wrong, and moved on. It wasn't a big deal. But for a lot of us, of course, we're angry. We're real angry. We realize we've been duped all of our lives and everything else, and it comes out in a lot of crazy ways. I just got, I don't know if any of you saw the article I wrote in Humanist Magazine this last month about the difference between humanism and atheism and come out of the problem. And he wrote me, he was from Columbia, South Carolina. It was a very touching letter because he said it really helped me because he came out as a humanist and he came out real hard, evidently. Reading between their lines, he came out real hard on his Facebook and everything else to his friends. He had 400 Facebook friends. He now has 40. In Columbia, South Carolina, including it. You think this is fundamentalists around here, conservative? You have no idea. And anyway, and then all of his family rejected and everything else. And so now he's got to try and tone it down and try and live be more positive. But we have to tell people now sometimes got to go through this problem. We got to help them through that. Some people never get over it, to be honest with you. Stay angry forever. Hey, I'm not going to let religion run over me, and I'm going to be an activist. But I'm also not going to let it, make my life a bad day. You know what I'm saying? I'm moving a positive life. So anyway, but we got to help people through that. We get a lot of, especially in the South, we get a lot of people, young people like that, who are really angry, and it just eats at people. Everyone should be a greeter. I mean everyone in your group. When people walk in the door, you make it your role. This is part of your duty, you know, build the attention of me to greet everybody. And use name tags. By the way, it's ironic, these name tags, we're going to tell a quick story. You know something about curly? They're falling off. That's my adhesive. People say, oh, your adhesive's falling off. No, my adhesive, that's actually the best adhesive we ever made for that. You know why it's falling off? They used to put that window thick of adhesive every fast like that. Then they went down to 9/10 of a mil. They saved millions of dollars. Oh, it was fantastic. And then some MBA 32-year-old kid didn't know squat. He said, oh, this is work. We made a lot of money. I can make more, save more money. So he went down to 0.78. Guess what? They don't stick anymore. There's not enough glue in it. Glue is fantastic. This is the 9/100. So what did they use at Avery Fasten for names here? They don't use those. They use an industrial tag. People, they know better. Where the world is today. Okay, meetings. If you have a meeting program where you have a speaker, etc., typically a lot of people have a meeting speaker and then like a potluck after that, a social. If you don't have a potluck, at least have some kind of social hour. That social hour is the most important hour, or portion, maybe a half hour, whatever, but that is the most important time. Have important programs that challenge people, not just tell them they're so right and feed their prejudices. Oh, their egos, you know. Oh, yeah, religion is so bad, it gets real old. You know, people, we're the type of people, frankly, that want to grow. You know, if you don't challenge people in our movement, they get bored real quick. You need to challenge them. So you need to keep a balance of speaker styles. Remember I told you about the different styles, ages, and gender. We try to get 50-50 age on gender. We can't always achieve that on the age. It's sometimes hard to do too. But try to do it at least. You know, that's your goal. Share speakers between groups. You know, I talked to you about how we're doing work in South Carolina, having a speaking circuit. You may want to think about it for Colorado. Have a Dharma Day dinner. That's always a good time to have a nice big dinner. Get a speaker on you know, a biologist or something related to Dharma. You know, how evolutionary theory impacts daily life in some way or another. Have a solstice party. Those are always good times to party. We had a party it was at my house, actually. And what happened was, somebody read in there, you're supposed to burn a witch, you know, to get the sun to come back or something like that. And it was like, and this is when, it was the stick-thin blonde, Ann Coulter, was real popular. She's been off the air now for a while. But she was always in every talk show and everything else. And everybody went up, Ann Coulter! And believe it or not, there was an Ann Coulter doll. They got an Ann Coulter doll, and they put pins in it. And they burned it, they burned her in effigy. So we can bring the sun down. That was a great reason party. Celebrate the Day of Reason. This is critical. You're going to talk about the meeting rooms. Have your meeting room size between 60 and 75% of the people. Again, this is just organizational, very, group studies. If it's below that, people feel like it's too empty. It feels too spacious. If it's more than that, than 75, 80%, once you get up there, people feel crowded. They feel like there's too many people and they don't need to belong. That's one of the things that happens. People feel like they don't need, well, I got enough people, they fill the room. It's crazy, but this is the way we think. So try to keep your meeting room. We've changed our meeting room like 5 or 6 times. We just kept getting bigger and bigger, but I always try to shoot for this, that 60 to 75%. Have meeting rooms that are lightly cheered, not dark. Here's a good one. Have a moderator assigned to each meeting. Why do you do that? The moderator is if there is a speaker who is speaking, you have a speaker that's speaking. You help that person out. Some speakers can handle obnoxious people and come in there and ask questions, over and over. You don't want to do ask a question, you want to give a speech. Where do you think I got that idea from today? You need a moderator to come in there and close the person off. Say, respectfully, thank you, we really appreciate your comments, but we need to move on to other people. Thank you, do you have a question to ask, or, all of that. We'd like to hear from this case, we need to move on. Simple as that, because you did. But assign a moderator. That person might not have to do anything, but what you do is, when the person, you got a speaker, and at the end of the talk, the moderator comes up and says, we really, thanks the person, we really thank you for coming to us. We'll open up, if you're willing, for some questions, and I'll moderate. And then, that person identifies people. Because you know why? The speaker doesn't know who the toxic personalities are, the wackos. You know what I'm talking about, right? And a moderator just doesn't call him, or maybe he calls him at the end or something like that. But and also to get a balance of people, different voices out there. But also, again, if the person, starts going on and on and wants to give a speech, then you cut him off. What else? Programs a balance of 4 dimensions. I talked about the 4 dimensions. If all you're doing is talking about church and state issues, it's not real balanced, is it? It's need something more. People get bored. Again, our type of people, they get bored. Handle fundamentals, infiltrators wisely and humanely. Like I told you the story of this guy, Ted, who eventually became pretty, very, very nice in the meetings and actually contributed in a couple cases. Here is really important. You want to get more people? You want to double your membership? It's really easy. You get people to ask somebody to come. Everybody in the group asks somebody to come to a meeting. You double your meetings. Like that. Just invite somebody to come. Personal invitations are the best way to get people in your room. You don't have to be a missionary, but you can be a missionary, but frankly, it's, we got this group, you might be interested in this book, what programs might appeal to different people. And start on time, end on time. Simple rules. Miscellaneous something, suggestions, do something. Focus on a major project to energize the group. We're focused on several in the Wilmington area. I've seen some other groups that just kind of go along and muddle through. There's no power, no energy. People want something really important. Last year, we did billboards all across the state of North Carolina. And it energized everybody in North Carolina at that. It was in the news media and everything else. It was really something. Of course, we have vandalized. Have 2 spokespersons for the media who are articulate, knowledgeable, positive, and more embarrassing. I can't tell you the times when I was president of AHA, I had to do a lot of talking when somebody in a local chapter, when somebody went to the media and said, unbelievably dumb shit. I had to cover it. One guy went and said, well, our goal is to get rid of all the Christians. Well, that went over real well, How do you cover something dumb like that? Some people have no tact, Don't have them talk to me. At least 2 people. Everybody knows who they are. Identify future leaders in your church. You're going to get young people, and they're going to have flaws. Or maybe they're an old person, they got flaws. But build on people's strengths, minimize their weaknesses. Put them in positions where they can't fail too badly, and support them. I've got a couple people I've been able to nurture through, and it's amazing what's happened. I told them very directly, I said, look, you know, I think you got some real potential here, but here's what areas you know you can work on, and they took it to heart, really worked on it, and it's amazing what happened out of that. If they get really good, if you really think they got real potential, think about sending them to the Humanist Institute. The Humanist Institute, 80% of people end up being professional humanist leaders. That's paid positions. This is where, you know, you think you may know something about humanism, you'll find out how little you know. It's very intensive. It's a 3-year course, 3 long weekends, 2 3-day weekends, and 1 4-day weekend. You can only go 1 year, but most everybody stays for all 3 years. It's very intense, very powerful, and of course, it's one of these things where all the people who go in the class already humanist leaders themselves already, so you kind of teach each other as well, but it really ups the notch, and it's a lot of fun, and a lot of people, a lot of chapters, if the people don't have the financial resources, will help pay for it. There is scholarship money available, but I urge each of your groups to think about if you got, or yourself, if you really want to, you know, really up the ante and learn, you know, what's really going on, you'll really move you ahead. You'll be studying with some of the best, the brightest. Commitment comes with involvement. This is so simple. You want to get, you know, you were asking, how do I get around the 90-10 thing? It's real easy. You ask people to get involved. When they get involved in a position and they actually do something, guess what? They become committed to the group. If you got a person that's just kind of hanging on and coming to meetings or not, ask them to do a job, a simple job. Maybe it's like you can have a picnic, and we just did this in our group. We identified a person, we wanted to get more involved. So what we did, we asked them to be the organizer for the picnic. Now we have a group of people who are already set up. It was a no-fail job. You know what I'm saying? We have a women's walking group, and what they do, they walk every week together, and they talk. You know, while they're walking 5 miles, they talk, and then they work it all out while they're talking from walking for 5 miles. And, you know, it was all the person had to do was kind of organize. They thought they were organizing when it was, you know, okay. But guess what? That person's going to be committed then to the group. That's how you get involved. And you get away from the 90-10. You start moving to the 80-20 to 75-25. Right? Ask. It's so simple. Just ask it. You get involved. You do a job. Constantly develop leadership. We only accept some failures. Build on people's strengths and minimize their weaknesses. Rotate new people on the board and committees and keep a balance of age, gender, and styles. It's so important. By the way, here's again a bit of organizational theory. Studies have shown the more women you got on the board, the more functioning you'll get. That's been my experience. It peaks at 70%. If you get 70% of your board women, that's generally the best functioning board. I will tell you a personal story. I was on a board and I had a couple of toxic personalities, and I pushed to get 50%, gender equity on it. It was so funny because this guy would pull up his bullshit, and these women would just very quietly and suddenly just cut him off. It was so polite, so nice, he didn't even know what was happening. But he kept it under control. But with a lot of not any fighting or anything else. You know, it was just very sweetly done. It was just beautiful. Studies show 50% of your volunteers will let you down. You say, you appoint somebody to be a membership chairman or whatever chairman, and they don't do the job. Guess what? Get over it. This is normal. Plan for it, expect it. 50% will let you down. Because they're not getting paid. These are people who are normally totally responsible for their jobs, right? They're not, guess what? They're not, they're gonna let you down. So count on it and plan on it. If you see, you got an idea they're gonna fail, well then you don't have a backup position. Get going on it. What time is it?
4:45.
4:45.
Break time.
Okay, let's take a break.
How long?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. We'll take a break here. All right? We can get back here. We're almost done. I almost went through the whole thing. I should have done it. I got going and couldn't stop. You wind me up, I go. This last one, it's really interesting. I went to a leadership conference, and it was the one thing that really stood out to me that's over the years really proved itself true. You know, it's for keeping your own sanity. Because what will happen, you'll get so angry and disappointed others. If you just assume that 50% of people are going to quit on you or not follow through, then you go, okay, that's what I expected. But plan for it. Have a backup position. Here's some more out there. The optimum size of small groups is between 5 and 15 people, with the optimum size of 8. Now this came out of studies with like psychotherapy and things like that. Think about it. There's a really reason for this. If it's 5 or below, people feel too exposed. You know, they feel like they gotta talk. If it's greater than 15, they don't feel like they get a chance to talk. You know, it's just the opposite. So small group involvement is between 5 and 15 with an optimum size of 8. Now here's what's interesting. This next one, then I'll tell you something. Groups are tribes. You're not an atheist chapter or a humanist chapter or a free thought group. You're a tribe. It's much more primitive than that. Somebody once told me, don't think of Europe as states. It's much more primitive. They're tribes. That's why they got all this animosity. And you're a tribe. But tribes never get over 150 to 300 people. Why is that? Because you can't remember everybody. It's interesting. I went to a Hutterite community one time, and Hutterites start off with 150 members. Once they get up to 300 members, they build another community, and they have it equally dispersed of all the assets. And then one night they have a drawing, and then people don't know which community they're going to go to. And then they got 2 communities of 150, and then they grow back up to 300. They naturally are doing what all tribes do. Same thing's going to happen to you. So why is it that the mega churches have been so big and popular? Well, I studied this because when I was in Chicago, the mega church that's the basis for all of the mega churches is the Willow Creek Church. They have 26,000 people come on Sunday. But what they do, they have this big mega church with a lot, I mean, it's a show. And I'm going to tell you, it's a secular show. In fact, they call it, what do they call it? It'll come to me in a second. But there is no crosses, no symbols, religious symbols. There's no God talking in it. It's for all intent and purposes a humanist service and a good one. You know, I talk about ethics, they have morality plays, they have rock bands. I had some friends who were in the orchestra, you know, really top players. They were great actors and everything else. They paid big bucks. But then that's like a show. It's for the TV version. But guess what? Remember we talked about community, building 6 friends in 6 months? How did they do that? They break down everybody into small groups. If you're a divorced mother with children and an alcohol problem of 35, they got a group for you. And probably more than one. You know what I'm saying? They'll plug you in with a group of like-minded people, same interests. And that's how they do it. They build it so they're building it at the top, the big TV show, and then down the bottom. By the way, Bill Hybels, who built that church, he purposely didn't hire a church architect. You got a mall architecture. For all intents and purposes, this thing looks like a mall. And in fact, they have a food court that looks like a mall food court. He doesn't go after the religious. He goes after what he calls the seekers, the spiritual. People are kind of vague, you know. Well, I kind of believe in God, but my parents went to church, and you know, that's what you go. Guess what our target market is doing? They're going after our target market. They do a damn good job of bringing them in. Damn good job. There's 23,000 churches that follow what they do. When in Wilmington, a big mega church there in follows. If you got a mega church, I'll guarantee you they follow that model. My company's R&D center used to be right near there, so I would always go to my R&D, and then at night I would go up there, and like a fly on the wall, I'd sit there and watch and observe. It was amazing. I didn't know what the hell they're doing. They had 24, I think it was, therapists in the therapist group. They had over 280 professionals on the staff. Amazing. On Monday morning, they have a committee that they evaluate how they did that Sunday. Self-critiquing. I mean, it's like it is a business, but very professionally run. They know what they're doing. We can learn a lot from these people. So anyway, this is why we have to work both on the bigger size and the smaller size. This is why most of the humanist groups end up being about 50 or 60, topping out about 50, 60 people who go across the country. Because we don't know how to build small groups and move beyond that. That's the reality. I don't know what the answer is, but out there, and the fundamentalists have figured it out. You want to learn how to do websites and how to do organizational theory? You go to the big people like these. These people know what they're doing. You may laugh at them about a lot of the theology. They know how to build organizations. Join with other secular groups. I'm doing a workshop in Sacramento this fall. They have like 15 or 20 groups in the valley area there, all the way from skeptics groups to, you know what I'm saying, all these diverse groups. They got so many groups. And I was going to do the program to all the groups. You know what they're talking about doing now? And just because we're going to have this workshop, they're talking about, you know, why do we have all these groups? They may actually combine all their groups into one mega organization with subgroups. Notice they'll have a skeptics committee group. Again, a small group theory. Really powerful. By the time I get there, I don't know what I'm going to end up doing. They're saying I might end up having to facilitate these, bringing together all of these groups. Or maybe it's just the nurturing stages. But at any rate, you don't have to merge with all these other groups, but you can certainly work together. Put up exhibit tents or tables at street fairs. We got a 12 by 12 exhibit tent, exhibition tent, and we do that. And well, you can't believe the people we bring on that. That's been one of my major ways of bringing in people. We have two big festivals a year. One is the Azaria Festival in the spring, and in the fall we have a Riverfront Festival. Have programs geared for families. This is the toughest. It depends on your group. You got to get a certain size. The problem is you got to get up to a certain size of families in order to be able to do it. But there's groups that have done it. The Silicon Valley group, you know, they're up I forgot, there was 500-700 people. They have a professional leader. You know, there's groups that have very, very good programs. The ethical culture people are very good at that. Of course, the Unitarians are very good at community. They're not good at communalism anymore, but they're very good at building community. Humanists, frankly, we're very good at building humanism, but not very good at building community. We can learn a lot. We attract many asocial personalities. We're talking about that. If you get a toxic personality, we don't want to be a warehouse for them. Don't tolerate behavior that's dominating, ugly, unnecessarily argumentative, or rude. It's that simple. Don't tolerate it. Never put out a general call for volunteers. Let's say, you know, you need something, a job to be done. Somebody says, well, at the meeting, just ask for volunteers. No, don't ever do that, because I will guarantee you're going to get the worst person that volunteers for that. the exact person you don't want. You know how you get volunteers? You ask them. And you ask them, you go, I'd really, really like you to do this job of membership chair. They say, really, I can't do it right now. I said, well, we really, we know that you're. By the way, you want a job done? You know who you ask? The busiest person. That's really true. I manage a lot of people, and trust me, you ask the busiest person. Don't ask the general public. And by the way, if that person turns down again the second time, then you go away and you come back next week. You ask him again. Persistence. Yes.
Toxic personalities, you also mentioned the structure of groups. Do you recommend having basically a structure for the board or some way to like?
We could get into all organizational theory on that, but there's, again, a lot of research has gone into the sizes, especially churches and others. When you get up to, basically, the normal functioning board for a humanist group, you have a board and you have members, you have your various committees, okay? That works up until you get up to about 125 people. It works with churches, it works with others. And it's just normal because of the way people are. After that, you got to get what they call, in churches, they call it a program level church or a humanist group, whatever you want to call it. Basically, you got to add another level. Then you need subcommittees. That's the general rule of thumb. When you get up in a mega church, if you build your humanist group to a mega church size, well, they come talk to you and tell me why you got
I
it.
guess what I'm asking though is this is going to be a really tough thing, getting someone to lead who's not really helping out the group anymore. And what I would worry about is that it would have the potential to sometimes flip, like, we're on the board and we don't like.
That's why we rotate people through the board all the time. You know what? I've got all this experience. You know what? I have never taken a leadership position on the board. I'm on the board. I've never taken a leadership position. Why have I done that? I want other people. I can dominate. I'm a dominating type of person. And I know all of this stuff, but I want to develop leadership. I want people to move through. And we're having people move through in developing leadership. Pardon?
What's a good time frame to get people out of it?
2 years is the normal. I think it's a good normal time on a board. You know your election for it. Now, sometimes some of the people we've got have been there, for 40 years. We're only 5 years old. But, I think those people are starting to move off. Probably 3 2-year terms is probably the maximum you want anybody. But if you can keep moving people through, again, commitment comes with involvement. You want the board to get involved, but also you want to build leadership. You don't want it to stagnate. You want to change it up. Lastly here, I really believe this, and maybe this is just my own style. I really believe in a balanced lifestyle. I want to speak to a whole positive way of life, and not let ourselves be defined by other religious groups. Speak to the heart and the mind. Speak to reason and compassion. We got a great story to tell, folks, so tell it intelligent, clearly, evocatively, and positively as possible. We don't need to get bogged down, is the Bible true, and all the errors in the Bible and stuff like that. We can do that. Believe me, I know it all by heart, everything else. Maybe it's just I've been in this movement so long. I'm bored by it. Bored. I want to find out where we're going. That's why I was asking this question. And it's exciting me. We're in exciting times, folks. We're on the cusp of a secular revolution in the United States. It's been damn hard. All those pioneers before us that got us here. It was really tough. Let me tell you, I found humanism at a young age, and as far as I'm concerned, these people were giants in my eyes. They really were. Ed Wilson, and Corliss Lamont, and some of the other people, Lester Mondale, he was the brother of Walter Mondale. People had signed the Humanist Manifesto 1. They weren't just brilliant people, they had character. And they showed me as role models how to live my life. I can't even begin to aspire to it. I want a humanism out there, or at least a humane, secular world to come about. And we're on the cusp of it, and we can build it. I would have never thought when I was a young man that I would be here today and see all the things that happened. Like the Smart Recovery, I helped start Smart Recovery. I've been doing this for 23 years now. And I've seen hundreds of thousands of people come here and whole lives change. Totally change and turn around. And each one of you have that power. You're a young man. Trust me, you have no idea. I didn't know anything of all the stuff that impact I was going to have on people and in people's lives in the world. And I have, in my own little ways. And right now, throughout the United States right now, people like you are sitting in humanist and atheist and free thought meetings and trying to figure out how to do this. I see across the country, everybody doing little things, and it's the little things, you know what I'm saying? It builds up. There's hundreds of Smart Recovery volunteers out there sitting in a basement in some, YMCA or church or somewhere doing this stuff. But this is the work that's got to be done. It starts off like that. And I urge each of you, it's been so important, I urge each of you to think about what your commitment is. And what you can do. You think, I just don't have all these disabilities and everything else. Trust me, we are on the basis of a revolution, and it can go a lot of different ways. And we have the power to choose which way it's going to go, what kind of secular world the United States is going to look like. We can define, we can spearhead. Yes, the AHA has always had, and all of our groups have always had small numbers, but we've been incredibly powerful when you look at all the things that come out. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, there's a big talk about that. That was done by all the humanists. We have the power and you have the power. Not anybody. You right now have the power. We're going to make the world significant by the courage of our questions and the depth of our answers. We have to ask those tough questions. Remember I told you about the 4 dimensions? We can't just be defined by what is out there by religion. We have to define what that world and what our own lives are going to look like. How do we define our own lives, our own secular lives? What's going to replace religion for ourselves and others? And then what are our answers for those futures? That's going to define us. And if not now, then when? We have tremendous potential right now. It's going to happen. And you can be a part of it. And not just a small part, a big part of it. Because today is the day. Right now. Right now. I've given you some tools here. You can go back to your group. You're going to get this. And, these are just some of the tools. But I hope that you, use some of them. I'd love to hear from you because I think you guys got some ideas as well. I'm trying to learn and incorporate these. Again, I don't have all the answers. In fact, I don't even know where we're going exactly or where we should go. But I know it's going to change. I told my kids, I don't know where the world's going, but I know it is going to look anything like it is now. But I know one thing. It's moving to a secular United States. There's another thing to consider. It's going to get crazier, too, in some ways. Martin Marty is a scholar at the University of Chicago. He studied his whole life fundamentalism. He's got this big series of books on fundamentalism. Fine. And his point on it is fundamentalism occurs when religions or ideologies of one sort or another feel like they're under attack. And so they double down on their ideology. This is what happened with Islam. Islam is feeling like they're under attack, not by Christianity, by modernism, Western modernism. They know they're losing, so now they double down on it. The Christian fundamentalists are doubling down. I went into the airport, coming up here. I was in the airport in Phoenix to come up here, and I'm waiting. I had to wait 3 hours. And this woman next to me, I said, hi, where are you from, and everything else. I was sharing an electrical plug with her on a computer. And she said, we're going out to LA and everything else. And And she said, where are you heading? I said, I'm going to Grand Junction. She said, you live in there? I said, oh, I'm going up there, I'm going to be talking. She said, what are you going to be talking about? Oh, shit, you know, go ahead. Yeah. So I told her, you should have seen her face. And I know you've probably seen it too. A glare. Unmitigated hate. It was hate. And then she started, you know, I'm so weary by it all. Again, I'm just bored by it, you know, get a life, lady, you know. And it was like, you know, I have to go through this one more time. But this is what we're all going to have to face. It's going to get worse on those people. Here's what's happening. The statistics are the young people are becoming second. We just need to wait for old parts like me to die off. 33% of the youth, the millennials, are secular. My son is 26. He doesn't know anybody who goes to church. But that's not totally true in the South. It's still a lot of problems. It's certainly in Utah and places, you know, a lot of Mormons and things like that. So there's pockets of it, but we're going to meet a lot of resistance on it. But our commitment has to get through that and still do it with some kind of balance, some kind of character and nobility through all of it, and not lose our cool. I could have lost it with that woman, and I try to be respectful to her and everything else. What we don't want to do is reinforce the worst prejudices of us, or nasty and angry. And I just calmly explained who we were about, and I said, well, this group up there in Grand Junction is really a neat group. They do a lot of humanitarian things, and it just stopped her in tracks to say that, because we're supposed to be evil, Satan's people. Anyway, we're going to end it here, but I will ask her, does anybody have any comments or questions about all this? This is the first time I've done this workshop, so.
On the way up here in Buena Vista, we stopped at a gas station, and the gas station attendant asked him where we were going, and he said we were going to a secular conference, and she said, really? What denomination is that?
Mike, I kind of feel like one of the things that you were saying, you were weary of that argument that you were encountering from the lady. And I think that the same thing is reciprocated on the other side oftentimes. They've seen our bumper stickers that they put out there. They've seen that nastiness and stuff. Yeah. I think both sides are weary of that particular debate, and we got to quit trying it. It falls on deaf ears when they try it on us. It falls on deaf ears when we reverse the thing, I just think we've got to look for some different approaches.
We do. We need, because it's changed. Remember, I grew up in a really tough area. Remember, I told you what was going on in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It's changing. We're becoming more mainstream. It's easier. Certainly, in the South, Utah, they say, yeah, you're going to get problems, but we're not going to be the outsiders. We're going to be the insiders. In our political power, we're not even using it. Political and social power. Yes.
I would just say that, it is difficult to have those conversations, but when we look at the trajectory of social change in this country, it's come from, especially marginalized voices, whether it's women, whether it's people of color, LGBT rights, it's all come because people said, hey, I exist and I'm a human being, you can't utter me. You can't say atheists, they're terrorists. People don't know a terrorist. If they knew one, they maybe would be like, oh, this is kind of...
See, that's why I'm torn on the issue. The LGBT movement did move until Stonewall. When Stonewall said, they said enough of this crap, said, we're queer and we're here. Get over it and get used to it. It was in your face. And the reason was, we're going to use the word queer because it's the worst epithet, right? And so I think we need multiple tags. I think we need, believe me, I can be as in your face as anybody. And then I can also, like with this woman, I just, instinctively I knew, because I've been through this so many times, I knew that she just wanted me to reinforce her prejudices, right? And I wasn't going to do it. So I was very you know, I really didn't want to get into it, but I was as nice as I could and explain nicely what we were doing and things like that. But, you know, like I'm going through this thing in Wilmington with the city council, and we're going to be aggressively positive. You know, we're not going to put up with any trouble, any bit. But by the same token, we're going to talk about fairness and respect for all beliefs. There's no right way. You need both.
An idea we got to borrow from the sheet is
Yeah. Right. It's interesting because I use the same thing like in addictions. I can tell when some people are ready to quit, you know. And what I'll do is, at least I say, well, at least I'll plant the seed. So they know when they're ready that I'm here to help them, etc. And back off them. But it's the same thing too. You can tell with some people. I've got a woman in my neighborhood who, you know, is very fundamentalist and everything else, but I'm just trying to be nice. And I'm planting the seeds of doubt here and there. It may take years.
Michael, inspiring top things. You mentioned that your group has moved to a bigger or smaller meeting place 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
That's the right size. You also talked highly of churches and how they handle all this stuff. You know, churches don't run out a bigger and bigger hall. They have a building. And people who go to those churches feel a sense of belonging to those buildings. Why is it that it's so seldom, and I don't know how rare it is, that organizations don't have their own building? We need a restaurant, we run out of things. Can you talk to that?
Well, if I get back historically, we blew it. We had the best of both. We had both community and strong humanism. Strong humanism, not weak humanism, in the Unitarian organizations back in the 40s and 50s. As I mentioned, you know, Unitarians, they still know how to do community, but they don't do humanism very well. In fact, it's a whole book about it, how it's rejected. But at the same time, we don't do community real well. We can learn from that. I don't know what the answer was, because we had that chance and lost it.
We're a big Italian event. We're starting a place called the Secular Hub, where groups, like-minded groups like us meet. We're going to rent it first.
Phoenix just bought a place. You know, I think they call it the Humanist Center or something like that. But, you know, my group, they're already talking about, you know, some of the people on the board, they're talking about buying a place, a building, you know, some place we can call a home for ourselves. And again, you know, I don't know what the future's going to bring from a secular standpoint. Are we going to end up like the European version where it's just a secular country? But I still see that need, that power, especially in the United States, because of an alienation in the United States. But I think we need that community. I see a real need for it. I do. You know, being in the South, people, when I was going to move back south, because I lived in Charlotte for many years and in Chicago for 20 years, then moved south. People say, oh, you moved down south. I said, I will guarantee you I'm going to find a group of liberals. There was no humanist group down there until we got down there. But I said, I'll guarantee you I'll find some humanists and liberals down there and I can be friends with. You know, that's it. And we did. You know, again, you need, especially in that community, you know, in the South, you need it to stay sane. You just need it to stay sane. And, you know, some of your communities, you probably do too. You need those people that, you know, they have to, it's just unspoken. You know you're on the same wavelength. I mean, not totally, but you're thinking the same way. Critical thinking, open-mindedly, thinking in the here and now. By the way, it's interesting. The different side, I think, is very interesting. The theater that, you know, the shooting in the theater in Aurora yesterday, I got 3 different responses on it. Rick Warren said that the reason was that we're teaching evolution in the schools. That's why we're current. That's what Rick Warren said. A Republican congressman here in Colorado said it was because of secular humanism. And my niece, who lives in Littleton, Colorado here, you know, on her Facebook said, that, I'm pulling out, because the language she uses is beautifully followed, but, you know, it's Satan's work, and she can't wait for the world to end, you know, the second coming to end, so that we can end all of this world. But look at how, you know, I'm tempted, I don't know what I should or not, you know, whatever I know. It's human beings and a gun that kill these people. That's what kills them. And human beings can resolve these issues as well. And what is she doing? She's rejecting the world, you know. That's the difference with us. We are in the world. We have the responsibility for what happens. My daughter, I told you, was making a director of Book of Mormon, and she called me up one night. She said, Dad, this is payback, by the way, for what happened when she was young. She said, Dad, you're going to love this line we put in. It's actually, there's a spoiler alert. But she said, we put this line in, you know, Trey Parker and Matt Stiller. Trey Parker, they worked this out. They said, it's something, I'm paraphrasing, it's something like, this guy is a Mormon missionary, and he finds out in Africa things aren't like he thought they were. He says, you know, maybe there is no God. Maybe we just need to make it happen on earth. If that isn't humanist state, I don't know what it is. So be it. Thank you so much. Thank you.